So, last night was the final taped episode at the Impact Zone for TNA Impact for the foreseeable future. Because, of course, next week they're going to be in Chicago and they're going to start going on the road full time. Now, this building is a very significant place, actually, at Universal Studios. It is Soundstage 21 is where Impact was taped. And they started taping in 2004. Until March 7th, of course, 2013, which was last night. Now, let me talk about some of the history of this building first. This historical building, this historical soundstage, has housed Guts and Global Guts, of course, the game shows on Nickelodeon, the awesome game shows Guts. WCW actually taped there in 1996 for WCW Pro and Worldwide. And, of course, that was right after they were taping at then Disney MGM Studios, those outdoor shows, which are amazing. They did the Streets of America. And of course, in front of the actual location, which was amazing. So WCW also taped some Saturday night shows until 1998. When Pro was canceled, Worldwide was taped before Thunder. Now, in 1999, Roller Jam, the TNN show that was promoted a lot more than ECW was at the time, it was actually filmed from Soundstage 21. Now, they left when their show was canceled in 2001, and the XWF company, the Jimmy Hart ran company, it started promoting shows there. Excuse me. Now, according to this, in May 2004, TNA announced they would start their first nationally aired television show, TNA Impact, on Fox Sports Net, and airing the shows from Soundstage 21 as part of an agreement reached with Universal Studios. Now, of course, since 2004, in June of 2004, TNA has taped its flagship show, Impact Wrestling, as well as Explosion from the Impact Zone. They also aired every monthly pay-per-view in company history from that location until October 2006, when Bound for Glory was broadcast from the CompuWare Arena in Detroit, Michigan. There was even a Best Damn Sports Show period that was wrestling themed as well. Now, as part of the agreement, TNA was not allowed to charge admission. So, basically, that's the reason why you saw a lot of pay-per-views outside the Impact Zone. In 2006, in August, Hard Justice sparked a fire in the rafters of the Impact Zone, and the fire was a result of a pyro igniting a burlap sandbag. Now, the soundstage was evacuated for about 20 minutes while the Orlando's fire department inspected the damage and the building in general. And of course, afterwards, the crowd was allowed back in and the show resumed with only one match canceled. On January 31st of this year, TNA announced they would be taping their weekly show from different venues around the U.S., with the first live show to be on March 14th, that's right, this coming Thursday night, in Chicago at the Sears Center Arena. The final 2 episodes of Impact to be filmed at this location were on last week and, of course, this week. And TNA is supposed to get rid of the venue and in the contract. Now, there's no ill will with Universal because Universal doesn't want this contract to end, obviously, and they have no problem with TNA coming back and doing one-offs every once in a while. Hence the one-night-only pay-per-views that are being taped as well. But, basically, I wanted to talk about that for a second because I have visited the Impact Zone on 3 separate occasions. In 2011, 2012, twice 2012. So, basically, I've had a great time at the Impact Zone. I've seen a lot of great wrestling. And the Impact Zone crowd is very interesting, to say the least. They're very fickle in some ways, and they're very loyal, though, honestly. Because every single time I was there, I would see the same several people. Not everyone, of course, but the same several people. And they're definitely TNA fans. They're TNA supporters. And that's not something you really see very often outside. And hopefully that when Impact goes on the road full time, it'll be good for the company. I'm sure it will be in the long run. But that's another story altogether. No, this hair is driving me insane. Look at this. Sorry, I just woke up. I apologize. Look at the blue. Yeah, let's try this. I'm trying to mat my hair down here. You're going to have to deal with it, sorry. But anyway, so we started the show off with a very fitting graphic. Of course, the in memory of Bill Moody. And I talked all about William Moody on the video a couple days ago. And I am going to, that's pretty much the end of that. I mean, he was a great man and a great performer. And of course, he will be missed. And I'm glad TNA did say something. And I'm sure something's going to be said on Raw Monday night. I guarantee you something is going to be said on Raw Monday night. And who knows what's going to be said on Raw Monday night. But now we begin the final TNA Impact from the Impact Zone full time. So, of course, we are on the road to lockdown. And by the road to lockdown, I mean literally we're at the rest stop right before the lockdown location. Because lockdown is on this Sunday. That's right, it's Friday. So, 2 days from now, lockdown, March 10th, San Antonio at the Alamo Dome. And we are on the road to lockdown. This is the go-home edition for TNA Impact for lockdown. And we start off, of course, with another video package like TNA likes to do. David Sahadi, who used to work for WWE, actually does tremendous video packages. And it's great that he left the company because now he works for TNA and he does a lot of their video packages. So that's why they look so crisp and clear and amazing compared to what they were back in the day, like back when they were in Nashville all the time and the weekly pay-per-views. Didn't have that luxury back then. Now with David Sahadi they do, and they can compete at least with video packages. So backstage, TNA started with the roving cameraman catching up to Kurt Angle and to ask who he saw under the mask of the Aces and Eights VP, because the last thing you saw last week on Impact, the hanger that got you to this week, was basically the fact that Kurt Angle broke in to the Aces and Eights sanctuary and attacked everyone with a lead pipe, and he cornered the VP and broke a beer bottle over his head and unmasked him. And of course we ended on that with How Could You? And basically he got jumped after that and we faded to black. So that's where we pick up right now. So this whole week, apparently, Kurt Angle said he was so upset he's been keeping it to himself, and it has rippling effects throughout the entire company. So who's the VP? Could be the person that has been the VP pretty much since day one, at least playing the VP. Because basically everyone that was a member of Aces and Eights in the past that has been under a mask was actually revealed to be in the group. So there's one more person left that's been an Aces and Eights member on a consistent basis. So is he the VP? We're about to find out. So Kurt says, I'm going to reveal to everyone who this guy is, who this turncoat to the company is at the end, sometime in the end of the program. And then he just kept on walking. So we get to the Impact Zone. God, this thing's driving me nuts. Austin Aries comes out. And he's dressed for wrestling, of course. He's dressed to work. And Mike Today and Todd Kennelly introduce our show. And they're expecting the biggest domestic crowd at Lockdown this Sunday, of course. And Aries will be outnumbered in his tag title defense with Bobby Roode on Sunday. Now, strangely enough, for the last couple of weeks, Bobby Roode has been absent from TNA Impact. And of course, I'm guessing he's going to be at Lockdown, unless there's some sort of a storyline we're going with here. But I'm pretty sure this is what we're going with. And I'll talk my Lockdown predictions tomorrow, because I don't have a plus and minus anymore, so I need something to talk about tomorrow. And what better than the TNA pay-per-view? But I'll get to that later. I'll pretty much gloss over it right now, and then I'll just pick it up tomorrow of my opinions, and we'll go from there. So, Aries proceeds to say he can't get a hold of Bobby Roode, but he says that's alright, it doesn't matter, because he still got the job done last week against Hernandez. Aries then turns his attention to Jeff Hardy and Bully Ray ahead of their title match this Sunday at Lockdown. Aries said he took the time out of his busy schedule just to give them advice, and they rejected him. He calls out the World Heavyweight Champion for a match tonight, and Aries said if Hardy is half the champion he says he is, he'll meet him in the ring and prove it. And Taz, of course, like Dynamite drop in there, says it's a pretty big deal. So Hardy's music plays, and of course, I'll tell you from experience, Jeff Hardy easily is the most over person in the Impact Zone, without any question. I know the crowd, I know the regulars. Jeff Hardy is the most over guy in that building at the time, But I don't know how that's going to translate when we go on the road. Who's going to be over in Chicago, or who's going to be over in Tampa, or who's going to be over in Detroit, who's going to be over any of the places that Impact's going to be taping soon. But we'll get to that later. So Jeff Hardy comes out, and of course, he emerges on stage holding both belts. His belt, and of course the TNA World Heavyweight Championship belt. So Hardy salutes the crowd and very slowly walks around, slapping hands of the ringside fans, and Aries jumps him. So the lights come up and Aries starts beating down Jeff Hardy ringside and rolls him back into the ring. So the ref calls for the bell, and we got ourselves a non-title match to start the show off. So Aries starts beating Hardy down, and this is the match that main evented Bound for Glory, obviously. And they're giving it away for free television right now. So Aries dumps Hardy over the top rope, and Hardy sells the injury to the midsection. Hardy crawls around the ringside area, and Aries mocks his dance. And we go to our first commercial break. And when we come back from commercial break... Oh, where are we? Yeah. When we come back from commercial break, basically... Aries is still in control, and now we're back in the ring now. Aries continues to maintain control, but he's unable to get the pin. Now, there's a tweet that's posted from Dixie Carter that announces that Impact's new television dates are going to be in Pennsylvania, Mississippi, and Tampa. So, those markets are getting Impact very soon. So, Hardy finally escapes Aries' attack before delivering his offense. Hardy climbs to the second rope and goes for the splash, only gets a 2 count. Hardy goes for the twist of fate, Aries block, only reverse to the head scissor takedown, sends him to the floor. So Hardy follows up with a big splash on the floor. And back in the ring, Hardy goes for a top rope maneuver, and Aries stands up, knocks him down. He goes to suplex him back in the ring. Hardy blocks, hits the twist of fate, you know, the weird twist of fate version where he sells upwards. And he bounces back up there, and he nails it again. Here comes Matt Morgan into the ring, and he has Hardy in his crosshairs, and bam, carbon footprint, and the match ends. So Morgan drags Hardy out to the ring, and he puts his head against the ring post, and he wants to kick his head into oblivion, kind of like what he did to Hernandez to put him on the shelf for a long time. But Bully Ray comes to the ring with a chain, and he causes Morgan to back down. Morgan slowly backs up the entrance ramp, telling Bully, "This has nothing to do with you." And Bully, of course, helps Hardy up before they're going to face each other this Sunday night. So, we've got a no contest. The match went about 12-18. So, TNA did not hype this match, so it was a guess that there was not going to be a finish involved, so that makes sense. Biggest question mark here, it was how they would arrive at the non-finish, and Morgan came in his way in order to make that a reality. So, Matt Morgan is now once again interjecting himself into the TNA World title picture because he wants to and because he can. Who's going to tell Matt Morgan what to do? But the thing is, you've got Matt Morgan now on the back burner, and you're wondering what you're going to do with him. You're going to have him face Jeff Hardy, you're going to have him face Bully Ray, whomever is going to win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship on Sunday. So I think Matt Morgan is actually going to be a part of the TNA World title picture in the very near future. So, we get to the general manager's office, and Sting is giving a rah-rah pep talk to Magnus, James Storm, Samoa Joe, and Eric Young. So, basically, Sting is fired up, and he's going to start the night off against any member of Aces and Eights who gets in his face. So, of course, this right here in this review makes sense to me, because, honestly, there's a best of 3 series between Team TNA and Aces and Eights to determine who's going to get the one-man advantage for Lockdown on Sunday during Lethal Lockdown. And this was not mentioned to the crowd, and this was not mentioned to the television audience or in the commentary, so needless to say, no one had any idea what was going on. But of course that would be mentioned later. We go back to last week, Kurt Angle, of course, infiltrating the clubhouse, and we saw the VP, but then he was jumped, like I was saying earlier on. And then backstage we show Kurt Angle walking down the hallway. And then we go to commercial break. So Angle is walking, trademark Scott Keith, I believe. So backstage, the cameraman once again asks Matt Morgan to explain his actions in the opening match. Morgan says he knows what he wants. He wants the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, and he's made a personal vow to himself to gut Hulk Hogan's entire roster until he gets what he deserves. Okay, that's fine. Rejuvenated Matt Morgan, I'm okay with that. Not somebody that really doesn't care anymore. He was really sour, really stale. There we go, that's the word I'm looking for. Very stale recently. When he was a babyface, and before he left the company, and we heard he was going to go to WWE, and he didn't. He came back to TNA and just started jumping people from the crowd. Then he formed that weird partnership with Joey Ryan, and now, I don't know if that's been dropped, but Joey Ryan's not on television, and Matt Morgan is now going after the World Heavyweight Championship again. So, okay, we'll go with that. The next thing you know, we have a video package to bring up the Wes Briscoe-Kurt Angle feud. So, they're going to meet inside the steel cage on Sunday. So, Aces and Eights music plays, and Wes Briscoe comes out. Oh, goody gumdrops. I get to hear his wonderful promo skills, which are non-existent. So, thankfully, Kurt Angle quickly ends this with coming out to the ring himself to reveal the identity of the Aces and Eights VP. So Taz suggests perhaps Angle took a detour backstage or got cold feet, or maybe he tripped and hurt his ankle. Yeah, okay, whatever, Taz. Whatever you say. So in the ring, Wes looks around the building before saying he has to get something off his chest. His dad and uncle were two of the greatest wrestlers. I believe he actually said two of the greatest wrestler, if I remember correctly, because this guy's promos suck. This guy's terrible. I know Backyarders cut better promos than Wes Briscoe, but hopefully he'll get better in time. He's had a lot of time. Anyway, more comfortable on television as he has more television time. There you go. And they told Kurt he's the best wrestler they have ever seen, and he believed it. He studied it. He wanted to be Kurt Angle until he got the chance to beat him. Okay. So Wes went over the normal Impact Zone what chance and said Angle is as worthless as the piece of tin around his neck. Okay. For a sport that the Olympics just kicked out. Okay, I understand you're the heel, I get that. And I understand Angle's wearing a red, white, and blue shirt that says Save Wrestling for 2020, but I really wouldn't have brought that up because company-wide, that's actually something that everyone's fighting for. So basically, wrestling is not in the Olympics, so they can't have a proving ground for future wrestlers, meaning you can have actual collegiate wrestlers getting into the professional wrestling business, and it's all bad for the wrestling business in general. So yeah, way to go, Wes Briscoe. Way to be an awesome heel. So, yeah, I agree with that. Wes Briscoe did flail his arms like a high schooler doing a presentation after the Olympics line. So Wes then vows to prove that a Briscoe is better than Angle. Okay, a Wes Briscoe is better than an Eric Angle. Yes, I agree with this. But a Wes Briscoe better than Kurt Angle? No, not even a video game gotta put that over. Thankfully, Angle comes out on stage officially and saying that he remembers it quite differently. He remembers a snot-nosed little kid wanting to ask questions and calling him every week just to get a shot in TNA. Angle says he made a mistake by trusting Wes, and he will rectify that mistake by beating Wes within an inch of his life. So before he exposes the VP of Aces and Eights, he's just gonna whip Wes's ass right now. So he does exactly that. He storms the ring, he blocks Wes with a takedown. Yeah, that was a bad idea. Try to go wrestling on Kurt Angle, and that just didn't work. So he beats Wes out of the ring to the outside. The agents hit the ring, so D'Lo, Al Snow, and Pat Kenny, and they're all trying to separate the two. So Angle's standing next to Wes, and he points towards him. And Kenny and Snow don't understand why. So before Angle can do anything, D'Lo kicks Angle in the nuts and hugs Wes. So Taz says, do the math and figure it out. And Brown points to his gut towards the hard cam and he sneers. Okay. So what happens there is what we have known on the internet for a long time. D'Lo Brown has been playing the Ace and Eights VP on television in the segments, but we thought there'd be a different reveal, and there was not. D'Lo Brown is officially the VP of Aces and Eights. Now here's the thing. there's a lot of directions you can go with this. You have another non-wrestling personality. I don't know if D'Lo can still work via injury or not. I don't believe he has anything that prevents him from working. Other than the fact that he's scared because, of course, he accidentally paralyzed Draws back in the day. But still, I don't know if D'Lo can actually work or not. I mean, he's in terrible shape. But when it comes down to it, he can still talk on the mic. And him, like Taz, could be an asset to Aces and Eights. Here's the thing, though. Is this the last member we're going to see? And the answer to this, in my personal opinion, is no. Because you have a vice president. Who is the president of Aces and Eights? That is the million-dollar question. Be it Eric Bischoff, be it Jeff Jarrett, be it AJ Styles. Who is the man behind Aces and Eights? And I'm not talking about D'Lo. I think D'Lo's the scapegoat. But there's a guy that's higher than D'Lo. But we'll get to that later. So, D'Lo, when we get back in the ring, D'Lo grabs the mask and says, I just came here to reclaim some club property. I'm going to go ahead and spoil your surprise right here, and then it's me, D'Lo Brown, the VP of Aces and Eights. Recognize that angle. So, then we get a break. Interesting way to cut to break, actually. But we get back from break, and we continue where we left off, and D'Lo is talking to Devon. This is going to be fun to talk back and forth. D'Lo and Devon, back and forth. So everyone is, of course, the other members of Aces and Eights. Anderson, of course, peeking in the back, and Doc, and Knox, and Bischoff, and Briscoe. And they're standing there, and they're laughing it up. So Brown shouts at Devon to lead the group out there to get the man advantage of lethal lockdown. D'Lo breaks the fourth wall and addressing the home audience that Aces and Eights stands together. D'Lo says, Sting, can you trust the guys you're going to be locked in the cage with on Sunday like I can? Or a variation of such. So Devon comes to the ring, and of course he's still the television champion, although he never defends the title. Although I can honestly say I was there when he won that television championship from Samoa Joe. I was actually in the crowd, so yeah, there's always that. That was also at the Impact Zone. So of course, this is a non-title match, and this is the first in the best of 3 series to determine the one-man advantage at Lethal Lockdown. So this was a short match, and it's very easy to call, really easily. So Sting and Devon, they battle before Sting is put in the corner. Devon waits for Sting to come out of the corner before delivering a huge clothesline. Devon locks in a chin lock, and the announcers are talking about lockdown in San Antonio. And Devon tries to follow up with his top rope headbutt, but Sting, of course, rolls out of the way. Because you know Devon cannot hit that headbutt unless it's to someone's groin. So Sting clotheslines Devon over the top rope to the outside, and they battle ringside. Then I'll quote this, a hyperactive fan throws a beer in Sting's face for distraction. And of course, security drags him away. And I know exactly where they dragged him to because I've been there. And Devon drags Sting back in but before that, Devon slams Sting headfirst into the ring post. And it's funny because, of course, this is very, and I do mean very, reminiscent of what happened between Brock Lesnar and Triple H on Raw. Which, I really hate to compare the two, and me of all people do not like comparing the two, but it's kind of hard sometimes. And actually, I'll go to this real quick. So basically, Rand's in the ring apron, and the 1, 2, 3. After that, Sting is busted wide open. So there's always that. So next, we go backstage. So, well, before that, obviously Aces and Eights now are 1 out of 3 in this best of 3 series, with Devon pinning Sting. May not have been a clean pin, but Sting doesn't lose on television very often, so they gave Devon that match. I would have gave that to Gallows, and honestly, that's just me, I'm a big mark for Gallows, as everyone knows. But that wasn't the direction you were going. Sting will lose in tag matches, but not very often will he lose on television in a singles match. So, I would have put Devon, then again it was captain versus captain, so it made sense for it to happen. And obviously, if you know any sort of War Games match, any Lethal Lockdown you ever watched in your entire life, you would understand that it makes personal sense and perfect sense for the heels to get the advantage. That's just how it works. It makes good sense, and then the baby faces are in peril the whole match, and they're always one man down, and it makes more sense when they go over in the end. So, but I don't think it's going to happen on Sunday, but we'll talk about that later. So backstage, Ivelisse, Velez, and Lady Tapa are shown getting ready to learn their fate for Gut Check tonight. And then when we get back from commercial break, this time our cameraman asks Velvet Sky what it's like to be Knockouts champion again. And Gail Kim barges in with the interruption about 10 seconds in, telling her that she will beat her for the Knockouts championship at Lockdown. Gail makes the point that she is undefeated at Lockdown, and then asks Velvet if she's listening to her. Velvet's, of course, stone-facing her the entire time. And out of nowhere, slap right to the face, and ask Gail if she heard that. Okay. So, the next thing we see is last week, this was footage that was shot for last week, apparently, Bruce Pritchard and Al Snow pretty much say Taz will not be part of Gut Check anymore. Okay, it makes no sense, obviously having the Aces and Eights member scouting for the company. So, he's out. Now, Bruce brings in Danny Davis. Of course, he is the trainer at OVW, Nightmare Danny Davis. And I like it's funny because later on, we talk about Danny Davis, and Taz brings up the fact that he calls him, that referee, bringing up Dangerous Danny Davis, of course, the WWF referee from the 80s, of course, who had a pretty small ring career that ended up with a match with the Hart Foundation on at WrestleMania. So, say what you want about Danny Davis, he had a WrestleMania moment, and I know a lot of people in this business that deserve them that don't have them. So there you go. So they deliberate, and they're talking about agreeing to decide what they want to do by next week. And of course, this is next week. So backstage, now Gut Check is now done. It was a match between two superstars that are trying to compete in Gut Check. Apparently, they're going to cut one in the back and then bring out the person that survived to face the music in the middle of the ring. Well, that makes sense. So, basically, Bruce rubs his hands together and says this is a very tough decision. And he makes a decision that Lady Tapa is going through. Not the decision I would have made at all. Now, granted, I'm reading all this, and I see that a lot of people say that Ivelisse is way too much like the prototypical Knockout division character. And I get that completely. I made the comparison to Lita, actually, when I saw her last week. She looks a whole lot different than she did when she did Tough Enough. And when she was, Sophia Cortez in FCW? So it looks a lot different than she was. But that's a completely different thing right there. Lady Tapa, who is not comfortable in a promo, obviously. She's got that deer in headlights look. But she's got a look, and that's something you can do. Now, technically, if you really want to, I guess you could build Lady... Well, I'm blowing the spot here, but I'm going to say it anyway. You could build Lady Tapa up as your new Kong, I guess, like the new steamroller of the division, if they really want to go that direction. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So, she's going through, and Ivelisse grimaces and shake hands with the judges. And, of course, Tapa's not really celebrating, but she's looking happy, and Bruce says, "You don't have a contract yet." So we get back into the ring for our mixed person tag match. Chavo Guerrero Jr., Hernandez, and Velvet Sky against Bad Influence and Gail Kim. Okay. And of course, Taryn Terrell's the referee, because it's not a Gail Kim match if Taryn Terrell's not the referee. So we get back from break, the bell sounds, and of course Taz is healing on the Gut Check judges. And he doesn't care about them at all, of course. He says Aces and Eights should have been included in the TV taping dates graphic. So they start working on Chavo. And we'll get to that. Anyway, been a long day. So Hernandez and Kaz start the match off. Kaz gets the advantage, sends him head first in the corner. Daniels tags in, tries to body slam Hernandez, but he's way too big and he reverses into a body slam of his own. Chavo tags in, connects with a basement drop kick, and a quick tag back to Hernandez, grabbing a bear hug, turning it into a suplex. Now Hernandez goes for his hesitation suplex on Daniels. Kaz runs in to break it up. They try to double team him, but he takes them both out with the clothesline. So Chavo tags in, hits the running senton on Daniels, who's draped across Hernandez's knees, and looked awesome actually. Daniels reverses the Irish Whip but gets taken down with a tilt-a-whirl. Satellite head scissors take over. Gail gets involved, turns the tide to her team, but then Velvet gets involved to give her team the upper hand. Alright, so Gail, Kim, and Velvet Sky get into it once again. It distracts Taryn Terrell long enough for Kaz to club Chavo from the ring apron. So Kaz gets tagged in and hits a running swinging neck breaker, which I know to be, basically it's a somersault neck breaker from the side. I believe Cena actually used to use it from time to time. So Daniels tags back in, stomps the Guerrero down to the mat, and distracts the ref as Kim and Kazarian gets her cheap shots in the corner. So Chavo's trying to fight out of the corner, but Daniels rakes the eyes just to stop his attempts. And after that, Kaz tags in, hits a slingshot leg drop, only gets the 2 count. He slaps on the reverse chinlock, but Chavo breaks out of it with a series of elbows. Kaz retains the advantage with a spinning heel kick, which barely connected, but it still got enough to daze Chavo. Daniels tags in, locks on the reverse chinlock. Lots of chinlocks in this match, weirdly. So Chavo tries to break out again, and Daniels clubs him. Once again, Daniels knocks Hernandez off the apron, distracting him long enough for Chavo to come off the to drop with a drop kick. So Chavo and Daniels tag in Gail Kim and Velvet Sky, and Sky is on fire. She goes for the cover after a spear, but Daniels pulls her off. Daniels starts flirting with her in the middle of the ring, and Velvet slaps him right in the face. Daniels blocks the second one, and Hernandez comes to save the day with a pounce on Christopher Daniels, sending him flying. Kaz hits a top rope dropkick on Hernandez, and Chavo sends him to the outside. Kaz follows, holds him up for the Acai moonsault. Actually, in this case, he hits Daniels' Arabian press to the outside, is basically what it is. And Chavo moves, and he lands on Kaz instead. So Hernandez takes the air, nails Bad Influence, and back in the ring, in the entire match, Gail Kim hits Eat Defeat and pins Velvet Sky. So, 7-minute match, and it worked really well for me. Now, next we saw a recap of Sting's defeat from earlier. We cut to backstage. Sting, still covered in his own blood, repeatedly smashing a chair with his baseball bat, asking if he can trust his teammates. Joe says Sting can definitely trust him, and then Magnus, of course, chimes in and says, "I'll show everyone who I really am in the ring tonight." And they walk off. So, this is our AJ Styles update for the week. So we go to video footage, shot in Gainesville, Georgia. The camera crew sees AJ, and they pull over, and they rush him. AJ immediately grabs the driver, throws him against the door, and says, "Leave." And that's it. So, we're going to find out what's going to happen with AJ later on. Now, I don't know if it's mentioned. Let me see if it is. Yeah, it is. Okay, I'll bring it on later. So next we're going to have the tag team of Garrett Bischoff and Doc taking on Samoa Joe and Magnus, of course the former TNA World Tag Team Champions. That's our 4th match of the evening. So in the best of 3 series, Joe and Bischoff are going to start it off. He grabs a wrist lock as the crowd is, of course, chanting, "Joe's going to kill you." And yeah, the crowd loves Samoa Joe at the Impact Zone, trust me, I know. So Bischoff reverses in a wrist lock of his own. Joe counters back and reapplies his wrist lock. So nice little chain wrestling between these two, trading wrist locks. So Joe backs Bischoff into the corner and clubs him across the chest with some forearms. Bischoff breaks off, runs right into the clothesline. Joe slaps Magnus to tag him in. And the two argue before Magnus refocuses on Bischoff. Bischoff catches Magnus with a poke to the eye, and Magnus whips Bischoff into the ropes. Bischoff bails to the outside, and Magnus gives chase, allowing Doc to attack him from behind. Bischoff rolls Magnus back in, clubs him with axe handles, and Bischoff chokes Magnus on the ropes as the Impact crowd chants, "You can't wrestle." So basically, they hate Garrett Bischoff. Okay, that's clear. And the "You can't wrestle" chant doesn't come out very often, so they must really not like Garrett Bischoff. I couldn't really tell from the times I've been in there. Sorry if it slipped my eyes. But Doc tags in and whips Bischoff into Magnus for a splash, and then follows up with one of his own. Doc drops Magnus with a short arm clothesline, and then a running splash to the back. Looked really nice, actually. Doc continues his offense, and of course, we focus on the tweet sent by AJ Styles. Basically says, you show up to my house uninvited, I'm going to show up to Chicago uninvited. That means that AJ Styles will be at the first Impact on the road next week, March 14th. So AJ Styles will make his return. I don't know what it's going to be, to the ring or to an interview segment or just to a run-in. Either way, you're going to see AJ Styles in more than just a video segment next week on Impact. And I have no problems with that. Now, back to the action. Magnus breaks out of the reverse chinlock and runs into the Goozle. Magnus escapes the choke slam attempt, and double clothesline creates the double down. Bischoff tags in, Joe tags in, hot tag to Joe, and Joe taking it to Garrett Bischoff. Magnus comes in, they double team Doc, and Joe connects with the senton. Joe goes for the cover, and Bischoff breaks it up. Magnus drops Bischoff with a running clothesline, goes back to the apron so Joe can tag him in. Tag in, he snapmares Doc, Magnus hits the elbow drop, and 1, 2, 3, we tied up the series. So honestly, I was happy with seeing Joe and Magnus bring their team back together, if even for just one night. And, of course, they even hit their old tag team finisher to finish them off. Now, interesting to see what happens between these two and these four men at Lockdown. So, I was happy to see Joe and Magnus together again. So, maybe, just maybe, after this Aces and Eights debacle is over, maybe they can team up again and go back after the tag team titles. So, hopefully that happens in the near future. So, we see Lady Tapa making her way to the ring, so she's going to be facing Gut Check up next. But not yet, because when we come back from commercial break, Kenny King is waxing poetic about how great he is, and about how he defeated Rob Van Dam for the X Division Championship last week, and he says his dominance will begin at Lockdown. Dominance begins at Lockdown when Kenny King does not even have a televised match, or a match even booked for the pay-per-view. Okay, we'll go with that. So Sting catches up with Eric Young, ODB, and James Storm. Young says, I may be the funny guy, but I didn't find what Aces and Eights did to me all that humorous. Eric asks Sting to put him in the final match and says there's no punchline with him concerning this battle. Eric appreciates Young, what he's saying, but he still picks Storm anyway. So, the thoughts from the reviewer, and I'm going to totally agree with this. Sting pretty much said, oh, that's cute, Eric, but I'm going to go with a real wrestler instead. Yeah, it'd be nice if Young just turns on him. So, we get our judgment for Gut Check. And JB's in the ring with the judges. He introduces all three to the Impact Zone crowd. Bruce Pritchard, of course, gets booed out of the building like he always does. And then Lady Tapa comes to the ring. Borash asks Tapa if the judges saw her very best. The crowd is booing her intensely in this case. They hate Lady Tapa. It's not booing her because she's a heel. It's booing her because they don't want her in the ring. They don't like this woman at all. But we'll get to that in a minute. So Tapa tells the crowd to be quiet. So that's not going to work, obviously. And she showed everyone what she was capable last week despite losing the actual match. So Danny Davis is up first, and he says yes. But before he can make a decision, Bruce Pritchard does say some very nice words about Bill Moody, and they actually get a rest in peace chant started at the Impact Zone. It was kind of interesting of the placement, but it was, I guess, the only way Pritchard could say anything. Of course, noticing the fact that Pritchard is the reason why Paul Bearer exists, in essence, because if Pritchard's Brother Love character didn't get taken out, Paul Bearer would never have came in to take over. So I can understand why Bruce Pritchard would say something nice about Bill, but interesting that it was done during a Gut Check segment. But then again, that's the only time he had in the ring, so you gotta take what you can, and like he said, and of course Bill would want the show to go on, and that's exactly what he's doing. He's back to the issue at hand. He gives the answer of no, and the crowd is Daniel Bryan-ing this whole segment by chanting no the whole time. So basically, Borash gives her the chance to kick out, which is basically rebut the final statement and get the last judge to give her a yes. So pretty much, she says everything she said before, and Al pays his respects to William as well, which is awesome, as usual. And he says yes. And now Lady Tapa is one of the newest knockout. Like I said earlier, and I gave away the punchline, but when it comes down to it, I had to. Here's the thing. Now, I see a direction to go with this. Ivelisse was the right choice, obviously. If you want to talk about what she looks like and the fact she has an MMA background and she fits the division right now. But I see why they went with Tapa. Because you need a steamroller in the division. You need someone that looks completely different. I guess you would say, I need her to be more like Kong. Obviously, she needs to be the steamroller of the division, but Lady Tapa's got a Tamina Snuka vibe, and I'm not just going with the fact that she's related to a Hall of Famer or a future Hall of Famer or somebody that is very influential in the annals of professional wrestling. I'm talking about the fact that she just gives that Tamina Snuka vibe to me, honestly. But, I mean, then again, she's related to the Barbarian, so there you go. So, basically, Ivelisse will get her time, just like I'm sure the Blossom Twins will eventually get on the roster somewhere down the road. I know they will. Ivelisse will probably go down to OVW for a while longer and eventually show up on television. I'm pretty sure she will be. So next we saw Robbie E. when we come back to commercial break, cutting a promo on Rob Terry. And, you know, honestly, I really, really like Robbie E. I do. And I think I'm going to go with this. I have no inside knowledge of anything. I think that Robbie E. is going to win on Sunday because of outside interference from the Big Bro. That's right. I think the Big O is coming to TNA. And I think this is the perfect way to bring him in, honestly. You just had the rift between Robbie E. and Robbie T. And, of course, Robbie T. going back to being Rob Terry. And now you have set the door wide open for the Big O to make his debut as the new bodyguard for Robbie E. And I think that'll work really well in the long run. And that way you don't really have to have the Big O work that much, because obviously he's very green, as is Rob Terry. So the matches are gonna suck really bad. But I think it's gonna have good heat, and I think it'd work really well. Bring the Big O to TNA, and that's my prediction for Sunday, but we'll talk about Sunday later on. Still no match to get the crowd interested in this match. It's just basically been a slow burn these last couple of weeks. During the UK tour is pretty much just the beginning of the end of Robbie E. and Robbie T's group. So we'll see where we go from there, honestly. So the final match of the evening, the final match in TNA Impact history is Cowboy James Storm against Mr. Anderson. Okay. So, Storm slaps on a side headlock, and Anderson whips him off. Storm drops Anderson with a shoulder tackle, and blocks the hip toss attempt, hits one of his own. Anderson responds with a clothesline, sends Storm down. So, he works Storm over in the corner with rights and lefts until the ref forces him off. Anderson whips Storm hard in the corner, and the force knocks Storm to the canvas. Anderson goes for a quick cover, only gets a 2 count. He applies the armbar, and Storm ends up arm dragging him off, but Anderson quickly regains the advantage and goes back to work on the left arm. So Storm and Anderson trade rights, and Storm comes off flying the ropes with double forearms for landing an inverted atomic drop and the bulldog. Anderson backdrops Storm to the apron, and Storm, of course, kicks him in the back of the head. You should know, like, history speaks for this right now, and it's never been different. You don't powerbomb Billy Kidman because you're going to get a facebuster. You don't backdrop James Storm on the ring apron because you're going to get kicked in the back of the head. I mean, come on. People watch video. Now, basically, he hits a running neck breaker, which of course is running. He runs off the ropes and grabs the neck breaker, takes him down. And Anderson tries to send Storm over the top, and Storm ends up skinning the cat to get back in. He goes for a swinging neck breaker, but he gets countered with closing time, and Aces and Eights make their way to the ring to distract Storm. So Team TNA and Kurt Angle come out to confront them on the outside, so we got a nice stare down, which allows Storm to get distracted momentarily. Anderson hooks up the mic check, and 1, 2, 3, clean win, and Aces and Eights get the numbers advantage for this Sunday. So, that's an interesting way to go for this segment, honestly. Basically, Aces and Eights have not been really taken very seriously this entire time because they're not really winning very much. But they've needed credible victories months and months ago. But it's not happened, honestly. I mean, basically they're getting forced and distraction and interference victories. Aces and Eights pretty much has no credibility, as I hate to say it. There's really not any major stars in the group. Now, there's people I like, obviously, but there's not any real major stars. So, that sucks. But I still think they're going to win on Sunday because you have to reveal who the VP is. The VP. They have to reveal who the president is. And once you reveal who the president is, you can end Aces and Eights. And I don't know, maybe Slammiversary is when we end Aces and Eights. So I don't think we're going all the way to Bound for Glory. I don't think we're going to get to October, but we might since we only have 4 pay-per-views this year. So we'll see where we go from there. Not much of a main event there. These two could have done a lot better, and they could have went at least 15 minutes. But, basically, there's a quick rundown of the matches, and we're getting a face-to-face segment to end the show, with Bully Ray coming out alongside Brooke, and Jeff Hardy then makes his way out to the ring. And of course, he's not wearing makeup, and he's limping to the ring. So Ray says, word on the street, Lockdown will be the biggest TNA pay-per-view of all time, and in 3 days, both of them will do what they do best, make professional wrestling history. Now, Bully looks Hardy right in the eyes and says the fact that Hardy has battled back from so many demons is a bigger deal than his being world champion, and tells Hardy he's proud of him. Hardy then grabs the mic and says he's remained champion through all the struggles and asks Ray if the beating he'll be dishing out will be enough. So Hardy says no matter what happens, he is also proud of Bully Ray for all of his accomplishments. The fact that they're both tag team wrestlers and now they're main eventing the TNA pay-per-view for the World Heavyweight Championship in a steel cage is quite a feat this day and age. They're not just tag team superstars anymore. I mean, Jeff Hardy's a world champion, obviously. Bully Ray is a future world champion. So, I mean, they've come a long way from just being Bubba Ray Dudley and the other Hardy Boy. So, because Matt was obviously the standout in the long run, but that didn't prove to be correct. But Matt's doing well in Ring of Honor, and I guess he just joined Scum recently. So Scum is getting some nice legs right now as a heel stable and a faction literally to take over the company. So maybe, hopefully someday, you see the Hardy Boys back together in the same company, and I hope it's TNA, because I don't want the Hardys back in the WWE. I want Matt back in TNA. But we'll talk about that later. Now, basically, Bully grabs the mic and says, I've never been proud of myself, and the only way I can look myself in the mirror and finally be proud is by beating you for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship this Sunday. Bully says he's not going to escape the cage, he's going to beat Hardy with his best move. So then Hulk Hogan comes out, on his crutches, of course, due to his knee operation, and Hogan says Bully and Hardy are the best two in TNA. He says TNA has been looking for the next leader, and at Lockdown, he will be there, crutches and all. Hardy is called the Great Champion, and Hogan tells Ray he believes in him and the whole crew loves him like a brother. Hogan says at the end of the day, it's a may the best man win situation. Of course, Aces and Eights have to interrupt this, and basically they jump Bully Ray and Jeff Hardy. Team TNA comes out to even the odds, and they brawl to end the show. So, mutual respect? Yeah, we're setting something up here. I'm thinking the president of Aces and Eights at this point might be Bully Ray, actually. I wouldn't mind that, because obviously I'm a big Bully Ray fan, but there's nothing, God, you have to find someone else to be able to lead the charge against Aces and Eights with TNA and like, Sting against 3D. I don't know. There's so many directions you can go with this. And basically, I think that we are looking at a great match for this Sunday. And I think it's going to work really well. I think Jeff Hardy and Bully Ray can put on a tremendous match, and they're going to put on a tremendous match. And you know what? When it's all said and done, when the smoke clears, whether he's face or heel, I think Bully Ray's winning the World Heavyweight title on Sunday. And he deserves it. He deserves it 100% completely. Because he has done so much as a tag team superstar. And now, he has done so much to rejuvenate himself, to revitalize himself, to make himself a better superstar in the long run. And I think he's finally going to be World Heavyweight Champion. Also, I think Christopher Daniels is finally going to be World Heavyweight Champion before this year's over. But that's another story altogether. So, Bully and Jeff Hardy should have ended the show. I don't really know why Hogan was involved. I mean, I guess that's more of the Impact Zone because the Impact Zone loves Hogan. Loves Hogan. So basically, this is how we end our final show from the Impact Zone. And except for the one night only pay-per-views, this is the end of TNA at the Impact Zone for the foreseeable future. Do I think they'll come back eventually? Yeah, I do. I think there's too strong of a fan base there for them not to. Are they going to be a pay-per-view? Yeah, maybe. Somewhere down the road, possibly. Maybe in a year or so. Obviously, it's not going to be this year, but I mean, I think that TNA might return to the Impact Zone somewhere. So, all of you HHN fans that think that Soundstage 21 is going to be used for Halloween Horror Nights this year, probably not, honestly, because I think TNA could still be involved there at some point before this year is over. So, but the show overall was enjoyable, and as usual, I cannot wait for Lockdown. A lot of unanswered questions. Who is the president of Aces and Eights? And will Robbie E and Robbie T have a match that's going to be more than just a popcorn match to start the show? What's going to happen between Gail Kim and Velvet Sky? They're going to have a match, obviously, but is it going to be any good? Can Gail Kim pull out a good match at this point against Velvet Sky? I think she can. I don't mind this at all because I like them in the ring. I think they have decent chemistry. And, of course, Lethal Lockdown. Is someone going to turn on TNA and join Aces and Eights? I mean, anything's really possible at this point. So, I guess we'll see on Sunday. And I'll talk more about Lockdown tomorrow with my recap. So, I'm going to talk about my Lockdown predictions tomorrow. So, I'm going to get off here once again, and I'm going to get me some lunch because I got to head to the theater in a couple hours for Oz and Dead Man Down. And then tonight, I don't know what I'm doing. I guess I'll figure it out when I get home. But once again, thank you for watching. And until tomorrow, that's all I got to say about that.